On today's show, we bring in one of the two co-hosts of Locked On NHL Prospects, Hadi Kalakeche, to discuss all things Florida Panthers and where they rank as far as NHL prospect pools.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this bonus edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, ladies and gentlemen, grateful to be bringing you this episode today with one of the hosts of Locked On NHL Prospects, Hadi Kalakeche, to discuss and focus more on the guys out in the farm who could be the future of the Florida Panthers. A little disclaimer, as this recording was 6 days ago, so some of the numbers that we discussed for the players might be a little outdated and not accurate, but it was accurate at the time. But the analysis on some of these players' projections are still something of quality when it comes to the content. So let's get into our conversation with myself and the host of Locked On NHL Prospects, Hadi Kalakeche. And I am very pleased to be welcoming into this special bonus edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast here to discuss everything prospects related in the world of the Cats. He is one of the two co-hosts of Locked On NHL Prospects, Hadi Kalakeche. And Hadi, great to have you on here and love listening to the show. So thank you for joining me.
Of course. Thanks for having me. You guys have a great prospect pool. I'm excited to talk about this.
Yeah, it's funny because of the contention window that the Florida Panthers are in. Some might think that there wouldn't be too much emphasis on the AHL side of things, with the focus on trying to win a championship. But with the Panthers and their contention window and focus there, I want to give you the floor on some opening statements on what you think of the state of the Panthers farm. As prior to the season, you had the Panthers ranked 27th, you and Sebastian High, going into the season. So I want to give you the floor for some opening statements on the farm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing that's really clear is the Panthers are really good at making do with the picks that they have, especially in the later rounds. I really, really like the addition of Gracyn Sawchyn in the second round last year. I thought it was like a top 20 prospect. So seeing him slip to the 60s and then get picked up by Florida, I mean, that's just a really tidy piece of work. And yeah, I mean, part of being a contender is you're going to sacrifice your future for your present. And, you know, despite that, the Panthers have done really, really good, again, with the picks that they have. Picks in the 6th, 7th round that are looking really good in hindsight. And we'll get into that more in detail. But yeah, it's just been really impressive to watch them go about it. And the players that I thought needed to take a step up in order to make the Panthers better than the 27th ranked prospect pool in our rankings have taken a step up. So it's been really good.
Yeah, and with the you think that with the Panthers, I mean, really, it was really 2022 for the Panthers that they really sold the farm in order to create their contention window. But when you think about just the draft after the President's Trophy winning season, their first draft pick there is Marek Alscher, who we'll discuss more about in segment number 2, and then this one recently in Gracyn Sawchyn, second round pick, and then now next year their first pick will be a third round pick. And I do want to discuss more about some of the recent picks for the Panthers, and you discuss more in your preseason. In preseason rankings, you spoke about, and I'm gonna name 3 players. You mentioned Gracyn Sawchyn, who is a front presence. You spoke about how the skating is there for Gracyn Sawchyn. Loves being in the net front. Traded to Edmonton Oil Kings earlier this season, who Justin Sordiff played in a Memorial Cup with a few seasons ago. Another one is you mentioned Luke Coughlin, sixth pick out of the queue. And also mentioned Albert Wickman, a recent draft pick for the Florida Panthers, who's playing in the SHL as well. For Alec Wickman, he's gaps up early and guys play along the boards for him. Great. And for Luke Coughlin, Elite Prospects talks about fluid when going up in transition on breakouts and create some deception as far as that. What are you seeing as far as those guys as far as recent draft picks for the Panthers?
I'd say Coughlin and Wickman are kind of par for the course. I say Wickman hasn't taken the offensive step up that I thought he would. He's still at 16 points in 32 games. I mean, half a point a game in the J20 league in your draft +1 is a bit under the expectations, but given his draft position, it's to be expected. For Coughlin, there hasn't been much progression in his game, but I didn't expect there to be much progression in his draft +1. I thought with Coughlin, you're talking about a long-term project who will develop most of his surrounding habits more at the AHL level. He's a player who can spend 3-4 years in the AHL, kind of marinate, and then hit the NHL in stride and kind of surprise a couple. I wouldn't be surprised to see that from him. And with Marek Alscher, you've just got an insanely dependable defenseman. And we saw that a lot at the World Juniors. Just a player who consistently makes good decisions defensively, who consistently transitions the puck well. I mean, in simple ways. He's not the type of player who's going to make a line-breaking pass, but he's able to just identify his first option and hit it quickly. And defensively, you know exactly what you're getting out of him. He's the type of player that coaches love on defense. It's just, nothing flashy, nothing outstanding, really physical, really simple defensive hockey. And yeah, overall, I've been fairly impressed with Alscher's development since last year because, he has improved in some ways his offensive elements. Like I said, like his transition game offensively, his breakout game, his passing, that's become sort of a staple of his game. He's able to just throw a pass up the ice to the right options. He will often hit just the simplest option, but you'll occasionally see him throw deception and, pretend he's going to make a D-to-D pass and then throw it up the boards, that kind of thing. It's still a work in progress, but overall with Alscher, you don't want to develop him into a two-way force. He's going to be a defensive defenseman, the type of guy who's going to make stops at the right moment. So yeah, overall, those three defensemen, I'd say Alscher is the one that's improved slightly the most. Coughlin, about average, par for the course. And with Wickman, like I said, I'm still waiting for that offensive step up. But he's just so dependable along the boards. You know exactly where, that play's going to die on his stick if he gets an opportunity for it. So yeah, I like those three guys. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think about Marek Alscher and even though no points in 7 games for Team Czechia, bringing home bronze, one of the top 3 players that's chosen by the team as well. Just very responsible in the net front, plays above his size at 6'3" as well, and also when it comes to the transition game, his ability to hide the puck as well, so that whenever there is a forechecker coming his way, he's able to still have his body positioning, especially with his shoulder there, to have possibly a backhand pass out of the zone as well. So I think that's also a very impressive thing of Marek Alscher's game as well. And great thing for him. He now has a teammate with him now in Portland in the WHL in Josh Davies, who a few years ago I called him my prospect man crush because I saw him 2 straight years at D camp and is super physical. Another player who plays above his size, earned himself an entry-level deal, and he's going to be playing with the Charlotte Checkers starting next year. So I want to get your thoughts on Josh Davies, because people in South Florida, the ones who really look into the prospects, they love Josh Davies.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He is violent, and I love that for him. He's just, all gas, no brakes, pretty much all game, throwing himself into boards, trying to throw players, into the bench every chance he gets when he's got to hit along the boards. Like he loves the physical side of the game. You look at his penalty minutes, and I actually expected it to be more than just 67 in 35 games. Even though 67 is a lot in terms of penalty minutes, He loves to throw his weight around. He loves to, occasionally drop the gloves and make himself known if a hit. He likes to police the game as well. But what's really impressed me with Josh Davies is the offensive step up that he's taken. He went from like half a point a game last year to now he's well over a point a game. He's at 52 in 35 games this year. 30 goals among that. And Davies has always been a net front kind of tip-in goal scorer who's able to also rip the puck from the half wall. But the half wall shots have been more frequent, more accurate, more powerful. And yeah, I'd say the one constant with Davies in this game is power. Whatever he does with power. Whether that's shooting, passing, hitting, fighting, forechecking, everything he does is just all gas, no brakes. And those type of players are so easy to love. I wouldn't expect him to become kind of a top 6 guy, but if you can have a player like that in your bottom 6 who just consistently brings energy to the game and consistently makes the next line's job much easier. Coaches, teammates, everyone on his team is going to love this kid. And I think he can make the NHL. It's just, it'll be in a pretty limited role. That's for sure.
Yeah. And definitely someone who's gonna, if you need him to be part of your forechecking line as far as like an identity, I think he definitely fits that category as well. And one person that he loves to talk about is Ryan Lomberg on the current Panthers as well. So games are very similar as far as that. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about another Panthers player who participated in the World Juniors this past tournament, and also another college prospect who is up there as far as leading point getters in the NCAA. We're going to discuss that more on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment number 2 here on this bonus edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Here with Hadi Kalakeche, one half of Locked On NHL Prospects. And so thankfully for Sandis Vilmanis and Latvia, they avoided relegation during the 2024 World Junior Championship. And unfortunately, I did not watch the exact game where he did score for Latvia. The time was a little strange with my work schedule all that, but with Latvia, him very controls the puck as well, and one a very dangerous wrister as well, and also another player along with Marek Alscher, who was selected as the best 3 players from his team as well. So although they didn't get any medals there during the 2024 World Juniors, what can you say about the Sandis Vilmanis from the Sarnia Sting?
Yeah, I mean, that Latvia roster wasn't the deepest. There were really, I mean, it was him and Dans Lachmelis and Nils Svenyenko, I'd say, that were the 3 real standouts in this roster. And with Vilmanis, you get a player who is just really good at playing down low. this is a player who really excels below the goal line, but also just below the dots as well. Just being able to protect pucks, being able to shield players, and get his leg out when he's driving around the net, trying to create some chances. Like you mentioned, his wrist is really good, but I was a lot more impressed with his playmaking upside. The intricate passing, the give and goes, the ability to identify open space and play area passes into space. Like for me, that's a major sign of hockey sense. If a player is able to pass into an area for his teammate to skate into and pick up, is that he's able to anticipate really, really well. And anticipation is a big part of hockey sense. So yeah, I think Vilmanis has hockey sense in spades and uses it really well. He's not the most polished skater. He's not the most polished playmaker in terms of the different passes he's able to play. It really limits itself to just straight tape to tape or area passes. That's about what he's able to do playmaking wise. But I think the vision on him, if you compare that with hook passes and slip passes and a bit more variety in his passing arsenal, you can have a really, really solid playmaker who can also rip the puck. Again, another player who I don't think is going to be a dependable top six player. And if he does play in the top six, it's in really small increments and well surrounded as well, on a two or three shift a game basis based on injuries, that kind of thing. But like, I see a lot more of that third line upside with Vilmanis than I did in its draft year, which is, it's a decent development in this game. And that move to North Bay, I think, is going to be really useful for him because he's going to be playing with Cédric Guindon, who's a Habs prospect who his main excellence is finding space off the puck. And if Vilmanis can continuously find him in space, they're going to rack up a lot of points together. I don't know if they're playing together right now. I haven't watched the 2 games that he's played for North Bay, but that development could be really, really good for his game if he can get some shifts alongside Guindon and some of the other prospects that they have there. He's much better surrounded in North Bay than Sarnia, that's for sure.
Another player that is that we saw signs of just his tenacity as well, and another one that can drive to the net, and one person that has championship experience for in him as far as the NCAA level. Now second in the NCAA in total points, 18 goals, 15 assists, Jack Devine, who played with another Panthers prospect who's currently with AHL Charlotte in Mike Benning, winning a championship together in Jack Devine's freshman year. Very quiet guy, very stoic too, which is what I like from Jack Devine as the few times that I've spoken to him. But just the growth of his game. This is a 7th round pick for the Panthers. So these are the other guys that the Panthers do need to hit, as far as they've gotten some picks and volumes, even though it hasn't been the early picks. But this is one that you're looking at, and it's like championship experience, guy who gets to the net, and it's resulting in point production for the University of Denver.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the University of Denver is a program I've been watching a lot this year, mainly because, my job is to focus on the 2024 NHL draft eligibles, or just draft eligibles every year in general. That's what I like to do, and that's what I do. And luckily for me, Ziv Buyam, who's a great 2024 NHL draft prospect on defense, who played at the World Juniors for Team USA, plays on Denver University. So I've gotten a lot of really good looks at Jack Devine, and every game I just come away more and more impressed with the upgrades in his game. This is a player who in his draft year I had 99th overall in 2022. So I was much higher than him than the 7th round, but still I could see some limitations in his game. He's a player with a great motor. He's constantly pedal to the metal on the forecheck, on the back check, and just overall he just overpowers players to the net. He loves to force his way into scoring situations and plays a bit of that power game for a 5'11", 180-pound player. That was mainly his limitation, is that he's not the best skater. He's not the biggest. So driving the net consistently would have been an issue, but his skating has improved drastically. His mindset in possession of the puck has changed a lot as well. He's the type of player who would never cut back. He would basically just drive the net every chance he got off the rush. And now you're seeing him cut back. You're seeing him lift his chin and look for opportunities cross ice when he cuts back. And that added vision and that new habit in his game has made him so much of a more translatable playmaker. And that's the main thing that stands out in this game, is you see a player who's willing to dish the puck, but he's also a really good goal scorer. He's got 18 goals in 22 games. He's a fantastic, he can rip the puck like few other in the NCAA. And overall, just I see some drastic improvements in his game, some areas of his game that I did not really expect him to improve. I expected him to stay that kind of drive the net, force turnovers on the forecheck type of guy, and end up becoming kind of a third or fourth liner who can just do his job really well. But now with these improvements in specific areas of his game, I think there's a chance you're looking at a middle six power forward. A middle six goal scorer playmaker who can kind of do a bit of everything on the forecheck, off the rush, on the cycle. And just overall have a really, really good impact on whatever line he's on. I think he's going to be a complementary player regardless. I don't think he's going to be the main play driver on his team. But if you can get him next to those Anton Lundells and some of those higher end playmakers on the Florida Panthers, you're laughing. Like this is a team that has the equipment to make him work. Especially I'd say with Mackie Samoskevich long term, like that combination of skills would be really, really interesting to watch.
Yeah, and possibly sometime in the future, if the ceiling is there, maybe someone who could be part of your power play too, as well as far as that. And for him to get the some time there sometime in the future for him as well as far as that. But we're going to transition over to our third and final segment here on Talking Prospects with Hadi Kalakeche here on this special edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So stick with us. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL postseason is now in the semifinal round with the conference championship games between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens and the San Francisco 49ers against the Detroit Lions. And if you want to bet on all things NFL, you could do that all with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is super easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays, find bets in the new Explore tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Segment number 3 here on this special bonus edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, discussing all things Panthers prospects, and wanted to discuss more about the state of the farm, obviously, for the Panthers. A little bit of news on former second-round pick Evan Naus does have a lower body injury. There's no timeline for return. Actually spoke about that with recently Jake Maurice, the play-by-play voice of Everblades, son of Paul Maurice. We spoke about a little bit about that yesterday. And Nathan Staios was the ECHL All-Star representative for the Everblades, Kelly Cup champion too. But also I want to discuss more about two guys. Lucas Carlsson for the Panthers was part of that trade that got rid of some contracts for the Panthers back in the 2021 season as well. Brett Connolly is the one that comes to mind as well during that time, but been up and down with the lineup. Mostly down these last 2 years. Was really a big impact for the Panthers in the President's Trophy winning season. But as far as Lucas Carlsson, as far as future with the team and fit, I don't think he's gonna carry the same load that he's asked for with Jordy Kinnear down in Charlotte. So whenever I hear fans saying call up Lucas Carlsson, I'm not saying that it doesn't make sense. I'm just thinking that you're just not going to get those same amount of opportunities. And also there's a logjam at defense, but he is the AHL All-Star representative for the Checkers. So just want to give your thoughts on him, because he's up there as far as points, as far as defense in the AHL, and can really work a power play too in all situations.
Yeah, I mean, this is a player with a powerful shot who can, move the puck fairly well from the blue line. But overall, I mean, with players like these that have been bubble NHLers for the longest time, I mean, he had one 40 game season with Florida about 2 years ago. But outside of that, I mean, you're looking at a player who has consistently struggled to get into that conversation. And at 26 years old, I'm just not sure where this is going to lead for him. This is a player who, doesn't have much runway for improvement. And unless they bring in a development specialist who can work with him on the fine-tuned things that he struggled with, I haven't watched much of Lucas Carlsson, but from what I've heard, it's mainly defense. It's mainly the physical side of the game that isn't really up to par, right? So, you're looking at a player who excels in one specific role, who excels at doing a couple really good things. But the thing with the NHL is you can be really, really good at one thing, but you need to at least be average in every single other element, right? It's okay to not be, above average in everything, and excellent in one thing. We see it work all the time for players. And I think of Tyson Barrie, who's just really, really good at breaking out the puck and playing on the power play, but outside of that struggles pretty well. I see Lucas Carlsson having a bit of that issue, but overblown a bit, because you're looking at a player who's really good at bombing pucks from the point. You're looking at a player who's really good at manning the power play, and like I said, just moving at the offensive blue line. But from what I saw from him like 2 years ago, this is a player who has his limitations, and in a team that's trying to contend like the Panthers, you can't really have those kinds of weak spots, unless you have a really, really good partner for him on defense, a guy like Marek Alscher in 3-4 years who can come in and play that dependable brand of hockey next to him. I don't know. I understand the hype. I understand the excitement when you see a defenseman score 20 goals in 61 games last year. Like, I get the excitement. I show a bit of reservation just because I've seen this, I've seen this song before, and it doesn't usually bode well for the player or the team playing him, because they're having to compensate and throw players out there that basically play for him, play on behalf of him, and it takes energy and time away from the important thing on the ice, which is score a bunch of goals, which is what Florida needs to do, right? So that's my thoughts on it, but I understand the excitement for sure.
Absolutely. Another one, and this is it's funny, every time Anthony Stolarz has one start where rebound control is an issue, or in the case of Monday afternoon's game against the Anaheim Ducks, which the Panthers gave up a bunch of odd man rushes and forced Anthony Stolarz to be above his crease for goal scoring opportunities. Every time those type of games happen, which Stolarz has been great for the Panthers, there's always the conversation: when are the Panthers going to call up Spencer Knight? When are they going to bring him back in? And I'm just thinking about when Spencer Knight came in at 19 years old. I mean, we're seeing this with Devin Levi right now with the Buffalo Sabres / Rochester Americans, where we're seeing how it takes the time for the goalies to get up to their game. And thankfully with Spencer Knight, he was waivers exempt. Excuse me, not he was waivers exempt going into the season. So going into that, I mean, 2.59 GAA, 901 save percentage for the Checkers this year, and for the Panthers, it's always been status quo as far as their goalie tandem with Stolarz and Bobrovsky as well. And also the plan is that once the Bobrovsky contract does expire, and even if you were to extend there, his cap hit period won't be anywhere near Bobrovsky's. So that's the good news as far as that in development too. So what have you seen as far as Spencer Knight's game throughout his 22 games in Charlotte?
Yeah, so I see a player who's highly technical. His ability to stay on his post and to kind of stay on top of plays in terms of vision, in terms of awareness, in terms of where the puck is, really, really good. This is a player who really, has an inconsistency that has harmed him a lot in the NHL. In the NHL, the one thing that makes you an NHL starter is dependability, is being able to give the same effort night in, night out. I haven't seen that yet from Knight, but goaltenders are a crapshoot, if I'm honest. Like, they're just they're really hard to predict. They're really hard to kind of break down, and once you get the hang of it, you still have some questions every time you watch a goalie. And for me, Knight has so many of the elements you look for in an NHL goaltender, except the one, which is consistency. And I haven't even seen much consistency from him in the AHL this year. So I think with goaltenders, the patient approach is the most important one. You need to be able to take a breather, take a step back, and realize, like, is the best route for his long-term development playing, second string to Bobrovsky or Stolars in the NHL right now, or is the best route for him to be getting as many minutes as possible in the AHL so that he can develop that consistency? You can't develop consistency if you're playing one every 5 games. You
Yeah.
can't. It's not how it works. So overall, I think this is the right idea with Knight. Just leave him in the AHL, let him develop, let him learn how to play night in, night out the same way. And not to give up some of those bad goals. There are some goals that were allowed on him on the glove side, which I was just like, you should be saving that as a first round pick goaltender, right?
Hmm.
So these are the things that I think Knight will develop with time. And goaltenders often develop at 25, 26, 27, start having their best seasons. So I would not put it past Spencer Knight that he eventually becomes like the bona fide starter that he was touted to be in his draft year. I just think that, you know, from day one, it was clear that Knight was going to be a project that will take some time to hit the ceiling. Like maybe he hits that at 22, 23, and we're lucky. But the more likely approach is that Spencer Knight was going to become an elite goaltender at like 27. So I think that's still par for the course. Um, he's the same age as Cole Caulfield. Like he's really, really young. But yeah,
World Junior teammate too.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm really I'm expecting Spencer Knight to step it up in the next like 3-4 years. But if he doesn't step it up next year, it's not the end of the world. He's still
Yeah.
very, very young, and goaltenders usually take more time. So I wouldn't be too worried if I'm a Panthers fan.
No doubt. And thankfully for the Panthers, we speak about rare finds
Yeah,
for the Panthers. And one player is Uvis Belinskis for the Panthers. Found him in World Championships last year and earned himself a 2-year extension for the Panthers
yeah,
because OEL is likely going to be gone. We don't know who's going to be the odd man out as far as Montour or Forsberg when they do hit free agency as well. So Uvis Belinskis has just been an incredible find for the Panthers in the little games that we did see for him being sent down as well.
yeah.
So that's one that I'm really high on as far as that. But I do want to give you the floor for some final statements here on maybe some under the radar prospects. Maybe it's guys who have played in World Juniors recently, like a Kasper Puccio or Jakub Kaz as well, or even some of the goaltenders that even the Panthers drafted late as far as that. So I want to give you the floor as far as some under the radar that we have not hit on.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't discussed Mackie Samoskevich, but I won't count him in here as an under the radar prospect. I just really
Yeah.
like this player. Lots of finesse, lots of pace, lots of skill. I'm excited to see him kind of develop. I was higher on him than Matt Coronado in his draft year, which gives you an idea. Like they were drafted really differently. I think Coronado's like a top 15 pick, and Samoskevich was in the 20s. So, but yeah, I was a bigger fan of Samoskevich's than Coronado, and I still stand by that. And I'm hoping he proves me right soon because both of them are looking really good. Outside of that, we mentioned Luke Coughlin. I've always been a big fan of his, but in terms of options here, in terms of players that are kind of going under the radar, I don't say anyone in these ranking in this prospect pool is really going under the radar properly, but yeah, I'd say Jakub Koch should be in here. He's playing pro hockey this year, but nothing really to blow you away. His play in the Czech Pro League has been decent. And I've always been a big fan of. I've always been a big fan of. I'm blanking on his name. He plays for the North Bay Battalion. I had him a second ago. Liam Armsby. Liam Armsby is a big player.
7th round pick from a few years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, the Panthers are so good at just picking these decent players in their last picks and players that are going to be, bottom 6 options more likely than not. But if you get an NHLer out of a 7th round pick, you're laughing. Like that's great value. Like 7th round pick probably have like a 5 to 10% chance of getting you an NHLer. And the fact that the Panthers are able to do it consistently is, kudos to their scouting department.
No doubt, and credit to them. This is more transitioning over to Bill Zito's team and what he's built together. Drafting Mackie, drafting Justin Sordoff, who I saw in prospect rookie showcase as well, playing all situations, tough skater as well, in your face, just like a Josh Davies as well. So we're slowly seeing that this is Bill Zito's what he's built as far as that, with the limited resources that he's had as far as that when it comes to just trying to still, like we harped on at the beginning of the show, still trying to contend while still trying to develop, because we see that the team up in the Gulf Coast in the Tampa Bay Lightning, they have done that as well with their system in Syracuse, and even in the ECHL with the Orlando Solar Bears too. So Hadi, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Any final word before we get out of here, or if not, plug your stuff, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. You can find my stuff over on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, my handle's right below my face. It's Hadi K_scouting. And if it's a one-stop shop, so everything you want to look at in terms of what I do is there. Articles, videos, podcast episodes, all that goes on Twitter. It's a one-stop shop. Otherwise, wherever you find this podcast, you can find mine. Locked On NHL Prospects on YouTube, on Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you get your audio podcasts as well. And on Twitter as well, LO_NHL Prospects. So give us a follow and keep along as we talk about the 2024 NHL draft. It's a great draft.
Awesome, Hadi. Thank you so much, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much. Take care.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast so you're notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Hadi Kalakeche, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.